Greetings, Okuna Recaps here. In this video, I'm gonna explain an American action sci-fi thriller movie called In Time. Spoilers ahead, proceed with caution and have fun. In the future, humans have genetically engineered themselves to achieve immortality. But there's a catch. Literally, time is money. Every human stops aging at the age of 25. Then a luminous green digital clock, which is implanted inside the forearm, activates itself and everyone gets only 1 year to live. After that, if you don't have time, you die. So obviously, the rich become immortals and the poor dies. Every wealthy families reside in New Greenwich, which is the time zone only for the rich. But the poor has to live in the ghetto time zones, where everybody's got to beg, borrow or steal to stay alive. A man named Ril Salas wakes up. He checks his remaining time on his forearm and gets out of bed. He lives in one of the ghetto time zones with his mom, Rachel Salas. She turns 50 today, but no time to celebrate, as they're late for loans. She has to do 2 days' work, so she won't be home tonight. She gives 30 minutes for Ril to pay for a decent lunch, and asks him to wait for her at the bus stop tomorrow. Ril makes a promise to her they will celebrate when she comes home, and they say goodbyes. On his way to work, Ril is stopped by a young homeless girl named Maya. She begs for a minute from him. As a generous man, he gives her 5 minutes of his own time. He stops for a cup of coffee and meets with his friend Borel. The two notice the price just went up. Before the two clock in, they see their fellow worker lying dead on the street with blackened digital clock on his forearm. Ril clocks out after a long day of hard work. He realizes he is paid less, and quotas have just gone up. Disappointed, he heads out to a bar where he meets Borel, who's already intoxicated. Borel points Ril to a wealthy man who has over 116 years worth of fortune, treating everyone drinks all night. Ril notices the man is flashing his forearm and drawing attention. So he gets close to him and tells him that somebody will rob him and kill him. He should leave. But the man refuses. Suddenly, a group of thugs called Minutemen enter the bar. Everybody has to clear the bar, but Ril stays and checks the situation. Minutemen leader, Fortis, introduces himself and informs the wealthy man he's gonna rob him. But Ril saves the wealthy man and the two run away from Minutemen. The thugs chase the two to capture them. Eventually, they elude Minutemen and hide inside an abandoned building. Although Ril regrets his decision, the wealthy man just laughs it off and says he wants to die. Ril thinks the man is crazy. He tells his name is Henry Hamilton and explains the sinister truth behind the system. Turns out, the main reason there are time zones and the cost of living keeps rising is to make sure the poor keeps dying, so the rich can live forever. But the truth is, there's more than enough time for everybody. Then Henry asks Ril what would he do if he had time like him. Ril simply replies he would stop looking at his forearm, but he's sure as hell he won't be wasting his time. On the morning, Henry wakes up and notices Ril is still in his sleep. He gets up and transfers all his time to Ril, leaving just 5 minutes for himself. When he wakes up, Ril realizes what Henry had done. Then he sees a message from Henry that says, "Don't waste my time." When Ril looks out the window, he sees Henry sitting on the edge of the bridge to commit suicide. Ril rushes out to help Henry, but it's too late. Henry's time has run out. He dies and falls into the water channel. Ril notices a security camera is following him. So he runs away from the scene to meet Borel and shows him his time. Surprised, Borel asks him how he get it. Ril explains everything and transfers a decade of his time to Borel. Then he happily tells Borel about his plan to take his mom to New Greenwich and leaves. Meanwhile, Rachel pays back the loan and boards the bus. The bus fare just went up to 2 hours, but she only has 90 minutes left. She has no choice but to run. Ril is waiting for Rachel at the bus stop. The bus came, but he doesn't see his mom. Realizing something's wrong, he runs to look for her. Luckily, he finds her. He calls out to her and stretches his arm to give her time. Sadly, her time runs out in midair. Ril's arms only caught the lifeless body of his mom. The next morning, he calls a taxi service and sets off to New Greenwich. He has to pass through several security gates. He's really amazed that he has to pay years just to get into New Greenwich. As soon as he arrives, he plans to stay at a really expensive hotel. When he wakes up the next morning, he checks his clock. He has over 105 years left. While he's having a nice breakfast, a woman is secretly checking him out. He tips the waitress a week and asks her about a place across the street. She replies it's a casino, and there's a dress code if he wants to get in. So he buys a nice tuxedo and decides to play poker. There he meets a man named Philip Weiss, who has over 9,000 years worth of fortune. While they're having a conversation, Philip's daughter shows up. She's Sylvia Weiss, who secretly checked Rill out at the hotel. Rill tells Philip he has a weak hand and decides to go all in. But Rill only has about 30 seconds left. Philip and Sylvia are both shocked. Indeed, Rill has the best hand and he wins 1,100 years. When they're about to leave, Sylvia invites Rill to a party. Rill happily accepts the invitation. Meanwhile, Henry's body is being examined by the timekeepers. Raymond Leon, the head of the timekeepers, notices security cameras around the crime scene and orders his men to have a look. From the security footage, timekeepers find a match for a potential suspect, Rill Salas. Then Raymond remembers he had a history with Rill's father too. With his winnings, Rill buys a brand new sports car and drives to Philip's mansion. When he arrives, he's greeted by Philip, his mother-in-law, his wife, and Sylvia. While Rill is trying to blend in with the rich crowd, Sylvia approaches him and invites him for a dance. She opens up to Rill how she really feels about the clock system, and she wants to do something for a change. Hearing this, Rill takes her to the beach and the two enjoy skinny dipping in the ocean. While Rill is having fun, timekeepers get a trace on him and they set off to arrest him. As soon as they arrive at Philip's mansion, they find Rill and apprehend him immediately. Raymond asks Rill how he got his time. Rill replies it's a gift from a man named Henry Hamilton and he doesn't expect Raymond to believe his story. Raymond tells Rill he knew his father 20 years ago and orders his men to take back the time from Rill. But Rill manages to take down two of the timekeepers and snatches a gun. Then he kidnaps Sylvia in his sports car. Raymond immediately chases him. But Rill manages to throw Raymond off the trail and escapes with Sylvia. When the two arrive Rill's neighborhood, they run over traffic spikes set up by Minutemen. The car crashes into the water channel and they are both knocked out. One of the Minutemen notices Sylvia has more than a decade, so they rob all the time from Sylvia and flee. When Sylvia wakes up, she's really scared to find out that she only had 30 minutes left. Rill also wakes up and the two set off to find Borel. Meanwhile, Raymond finds their wrecked car. When backup arrives, they ask Raymond what to do. Raymond confidently replies the two will come to them. On the other hand, Rill and Sylvia arrive at Borel's house, but Borel is dead. Borel's wife tells Rill that Borel drank to death because Rill gave him a decade and shuts the door. So the two have to pawn Sylvia's diamond earrings to survive. Then Rill holds Sylvia at gunpoint and forces her to call her father. As soon as Philip picks up the phone, Rill tells him to give the phone to Raymond. Rill tells Raymond to distribute 1,000 years to the timelines in his neighborhood by sunrise tomorrow. Then, he'll release Sylvia. Raymond warns Rill not to step in his father's shoes or he'll die like his father. Philip knows Rill is planning to give time to the poor, so he's hesitant, while his wife is willing to pay any amount for her daughter. Philip just doesn't want the poor to get more time. Meanwhile, Rill and Sylvia spend the night at Rill's house. Rill tells Sylvia how his father died. His father fights for time. Then he shared his earnings with the poor to give them hope, so he was killed for that. Rill also shows Sylvia a trick his father used to win every fight. The more they talk, the more Sylvia understands Rill and how the rich are robbing from the poor to become immortal. On the morning, while Sylvia is still sleeping, Rill is waiting for the transfer. However, the transfer never came. Disappointed, Rill tells Sylvia she can go home and gives one of his gun to her. Then the two share a kiss. While Sylvia is making a call to her father, Raymond sneaks behind Rill to shoot him. Sylvia notices Raymond and shoots him to save Rill. After that, the two flee with the cop car, but they both don't have much time left, so they rob a wealthy woman and steal her car. While they're resting in their stolen car, they make a plan to rob the time banks and give time back to the poor. The next day, they crash their truck into one of the time banks. They take what they need and tell the customers to take as many time capsules as they want. Everyone happily clears out the vault. One night, timekeepers surround a motel where Rill and Sylvia are hiding, but Rill notices the cop cars outside and the two jump off the building to escape. Other timekeepers are hesitant to jump, but Raymond jumps and continues the chase. However, Rill and Sylvia manage to board a bus and escape from Raymond again. The next day, while the couple is hiding in another motel, Minutemen break open the door and hold the duo at gunpoint. Fortis is angry that he can't steal and rob anymore because Rill is giving away time to everybody, so he challenges Rill to fight. The two men intertwine their forearms and try to steal each other's time, but Rill uses the trick his father had taught him and manages to steal time from Fortis. While Fortis is distracted, Rill kills 3 Minutemen and points the gun at Fortis. Then he kills Fortis by stealing all of his time. After that, the couple checks the situation at nearby time bank. The rich just raised the loan rate again. They realize their plan didn't work. They couldn't hurt the rich, so they devise a new plan. The next morning, Philip arrives his job with so many bodyguards. Suddenly, Sylvia walks into the building and tells Philip she wants to surrender. While Philip is busy talking to Sylvia, Rill points his gun at Philip from behind. Philip has to order his bodyguards to stand down. Then the two take Philip hostage and force him to open his time vault. Although Philip refuses to give the password, Sylvia takes a guess, and they successfully open the vault. They find a time capsule which contains 1,000,000 years, so they take it and flee. However, Raymond is already on their tail, and timekeepers had already formed a blockade to stop them. Rill runs the car through the security gate and escapes. While other timekeepers are dumbfounded, Raymond continues the chase. As soon as the two reach Rill's neighborhood, Raymond runs his car into Rill's car. But Rill gets out of the car and gives the time capsule to Maya. She happily runs away to share the time with everybody. Meanwhile, Raymond gets out of his car and points his gun at the two, but the crowd flood together to get their time. So the two run away on foot while Raymond is distracted. Raymond gets inside a cop car to continue his chase, and manages to intercept the couple near the border. However, he forgot to check his time before chasing Rill and Sylvia, so his clock runs out and he dies on the spot. Rill and Sylvia also realize they don't have much time either. But every cop car has a spare time capsule for timekeepers, so they make a run for Raymond's car. Rill gets inside the car first and retrieves time. Then he runs back to Sylvia to share his time. At last, the two manage to stay alive, each with a day left on their clocks. Meanwhile, thanks to Rill and Sylvia, the people from Rill's neighborhood got so much time on their hands that they all leave their homes and head for New Greenwich. Timekeepers can't do anything but watch, while every time zone collapses one by one. The movie ends as Rill and Sylvia get out of their car to rob another time bank. Subscribe and turn on the notification for more videos like this. Smash a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching and catch you in the next one.